The movie begins with a strangely creepy atmosphere. We see a woman named Amy, who wakes up in a grimy, post-apocalyptic style building. She gasps and emerges from a bathtub full of blood. Struggling, she quickly crawls out of it, heaving. After calming her breath, she drags herself to the nearby sink and drags her body up. Finally, she pays attention to the room all around. The walls, ceiling, windows, and everything inside is disgustingly dirty. What is worse is that the woman doesn't even know how she got there. Everything is foreign to her. Just then, a little boy with an unnaturally pale face and blackened lips arrives. He is wearing glasses and is named Timmy. Timmy tells the woman that she is not allowed to be in this place. The woman looks lost herself. After knowing his name, she asks about the place and he tells her. She is currently in a place called the school, and this specific room that she emerged in comes under the restricted area. The woman digests his words and is about to ask how she got here, when they hear strange creepy noises coming from a specific wall. This wall is laden with pipes and the name, Zach, is painted in capital letters. As the noise subsides, Amy's attention is once again grabbed by Timmy's voice. He tells her that she would get in trouble if she stayed there, so it is better for her to just follow him out. Despite her growing concern and fear, the woman decides to follow this strange child out of the room. She follows the little boy outside to find that the hallway is just as trashed as the room she was in. A gloomy and creepy atmosphere lingers around them. The walls are smeared with frightening and dreadful images portraying evil entities. She goes near the painting of a monster with blood flowing down its mouth. Trembling, she extends her arm to touch it and immediately regrets. Her finger is tainted with the blood that flows from the monster's mouth. The sensation is haunting as she worries that it might be real. All of a sudden, she hears a trembling voice behind her, calling out to her mother. She whips around to find a little girl. Her clothes are soaked and her collar is smeared in blood. She calls out to Amy, asking about her mother. The woman is lost for words. She loudly calls out to Timmy, who whips around and warns them to be quiet. He quickly arrives and tells the little girl that she must not cry. Hearing the urgency in his voice, Amy tries to soothe the girl. Just then they hear creepy, terrifying noises coming from a little distance away. A startled Timmy tells them that it is too late. Just then, around the corner, a strange, black hand pops out. The little girl and Amy are petrified. Timmy asks them to stay where they are and not to make a sound. A strange creature slithers menacingly towards them. It looks slimy with white hair and terrifying white pupils. Timmy tells them that these monsters are called hungry. They should make sure not to let the monster touch them. As long as they keep quiet and do not move, it would not be able to detect them. True enough, the monster slithers past them and disappears in a puff of smoke. As soon as the monster vanishes, the terrified little girl breaks down. She cries in a small voice asking how she got there. Amy caresses her cheek to comfort her, when a strange memory pops up in her head. Turns out Amy was a doctor before she somehow got into this place. She remembers one of her patients who had the same blood-smeared collar. Shocked, she quickly removes her hand and turns around to ask Timmy about the place again. To her horror, Timmy is no longer there. It is just her and the little girl. Mustering up her courage, she takes the little girl's hand and proceeds forward. A few steps away, she sees a door. They peek inside to find horrifying verses about hungries and some weepers graffitied on the wall. As she is immersed in reading them, someone attacks her, making her fall to the ground. Before her conscience fades, she sees a menacing young boy approach her. The scene cuts back to the past to one of Amy's flashbacks. In the flashback, she is in the hospital, going back to her office when she is approached by one of her colleagues named Peter. He asks her to look at one of his patients named Valerie. Amy tries to decline by saying that she would be looking at the reports of her son David. Peter, however, insists, and she has no other choice but to go and have a look. While she is monitoring an unconscious Valerie, all of a sudden, the girl startles awake. In a daze, she keeps screaming about the walls burning. Amy approaches to calm her down, but the girl grabs Amy and threatens her in a strange voice. She warns to burn her along with her. After saying that, she falls down limply, and her heart gives out. Amy rushes to give her emergency aid. Unbeknownst to her, Timmy is standing in one corner of the room, watching her do so. When she comes back to her senses, she finds herself trapped in a room. Terrified, she gets up and rushes towards the door, but to no avail. She cries out for help and bangs on the door, but no one comes to her rescue. Even the windows look hopeless. Feeling overwhelmed, she breaks down. The scene shifts back to the past, and we see Amy going towards her son's room. His little son lies on the bed, connected to medical equipment. She pours herself a cup of coffee, remembering what Valerie had said to her before passing away. Moments later, she gets a call from her husband Isaac. After their son fell into a coma, Amy has been neglecting him. He pleads with her that he needs her, but the woman merely cuts the call. Just then, Peter enters the room. Amy offers condolences for Valerie and he asks about the situation. Amy tells him how Valerie woke up from a nightmare. She looked petrified and was muttering about the walls burning down. It seemed as though, in her nightmare, she was... Peter ponders for a moment, and then asks rhetorically whether a nightmare is enough to induce a heart attack. He then asks about David's condition. Amy tells him that it is going great so far since she just detected a little brain activity. Peter then mentions Isaac and Amy's mood collapses. She politely asks him to leave so that she may go back to her research. Before going away, Peter mentions whether Valerie knew that this part of the hospital used to be a school and was burned down by a troubled teen 100 years ago. After Peter leaves, Amy comes to lie beside her son. As she dozes off, a spider emerges from under David's hand and crawls towards Amy. It attacks, causing Amy to gasp awake, only to find herself inside a dark, creepy room. Her heart beats fast as she looks around to find her son. Just as her heart is about to explode, she gasps awake once more, and this time she finds herself in her son's room, but there seems to be another boy standing nearby. The boy approaches David's bedside with the evil intent. The entire situation jumbles together, and it is hard to distinguish what is real and what is not. Before the boy unplugs the wires, the scene shifts back to the present, confined Amy. She sits crouched in the haunted room, scratching the wall dazedly. Back to the past, we see Peter and Amy having a conversation. It has been 2 years since David fell into a coma. Ever since then, there have been no cognitive functions on his part. Despite all this, Amy seems reluctant to give up and let go. How could she? She is a mother after all. Any little hope, however small it may be, would be enough for her to hold on to. Peter tries to convince her into letting her son go and letting him rest in peace. It is already long enough. The more she drags it on, the more she would be throwing herself into the depths of suffering and hell. The scene cuts back to the present and we see Amy noticing someone outside the window. She carefully gets up and approaches the window. There, she hears someone singing. All of a sudden, someone outside claims that they should not be singing. Amy tries to peek outside when a terrifying doll is thrusted at the window. Seeing it so suddenly, Amy gasps and moves back. After calming her racing heart, Amy peeks out and sees a little girl sitting with the same doll. The girl accuses Amy of scaring her doll, which she calls Sarah. Amy apologizes and sweetly tells the little girl her name. She then proceeds to ask about her and the girl tells her she is Becky. Amy smiles and tells her what a pretty name she has. Then, the woman slowly asks the little girl if she would help her. To her surprise, Becky already knows what she wants and she refuses to let her out. She tells the woman that Sarah told her what some wallwalker wants Amy, that is why she cannot help. Becky points at something behind her and a terrified Amy looks back. The wall opposite her says that there is no way out. As she looks at it fearfully, it strangely begins to contort. Her attention is diverted as Becky tells her about some weepers who would be coming. Just like that, the little girl disappears. A petrified Amy is at a loss. Ever since she somehow came here, nothing seems to go her way. Every other turn exposes her to bizarre, supernatural and depressing phenomena. She cries and bangs the window for help. She thrashes and smashes her fists all around, but it is no use. The scene shifts back to the past. We see Amy sitting beside her comatose son when Isaac arrived. He slowly approaches Amy and puts a hand on her shoulder. Amy brushes it off and gets up to leave the room. The tension between the couple is very evident. Outside, an emergency patient named Melanie is being carried to the ER. We see Amy sitting alone in another room. She looks traumatized. Her phone keeps ringing with incoming notifications about patients, however, she looks extremely spent. She lazily flips her phone to look through the messages. After reading, she gets up to leave the room, leaving her phone behind. Slowly, she makes her way to the ER, where the attendants tell her that the patient has already lost too much blood. They tell her to quickly take action. Just that moment, she sees the limp body of the patient get up. She looks directly at Amy and asks for help, addressing her as her mother. Amy is petrified. She moves back in horror. All the while, the nurses and attendants keep calling her to take action. It seems as though, except her, nobody else noticed this creepy happening. Or maybe it is all in her head. Back to the present, Amy wakes up from her sleep and finds herself back in the locked room. Her eyes suddenly land on a spider that is running along a corner, slowly approaching the place. She cleans it up with her hands. As she brushes the dirt away, the same phrase that Melanie uttered, "Help me, mummy," in her flashback, is written all over the floor. A chill runs down her spine as she quickly moves back. Just then, the door opens and the same boy who had captured her enters. Along with him, Timmy, another boy and a girl also come in. They tell her that their leader Zach would be meeting her. They then tie her up and drag her along to see him. As she arrives at the gathering, she finds a group of people, or more like a group of deceased people. They are all corpses. Except Amy, nobody else is alive in there. Becky is also present among them. The leader Zach sits on a chair. The group gathers and a pair of twins announce that there has been a crime. Hearing this, Zach jumps down. He declares that someone has been singing. Nobody confesses on their own. Thus, he points his stick at a chubby-looking boy and asks him to come forth. The boy is petrified to speak, but when Zach gives him a nice little scare, he quickly starts humming the song that was being sung. Amy looks on in horror as all this unfolds. The poor chubby boy is sentenced to be thrown into the basement. As he is dragged away, he screams and cries to be spared, but Zach merely laughs in response. After he is carried away, a girl is pushed to the front. She turns out to be the same girl who had approached Amy and cried for help. The twins come forth once more, announcing that this one has been crying. Zach immediately asks them to throw her in a cage. Hearing this, the girl is terrified. Amy also shouts, asking them to stop, but the poor girl is duly thrown into the cage nearby. Another girl also seems to be inside already. Who knows how many days she has spent there. Poor little thing. Amy keeps shouting at Zach to let the girl go and he approaches her. As he mocks her for being scared, one of the girls among the group asks about her crime. There seems to be a gunshot wound on her forehead. This greatly angers Zach and he rushes at the girl, shouting at her to keep quiet unless she is asked to speak. He hits her in the head and the girl falls on her back. Zach then approaches Amy and states that her crime is that she was found in the Forbidden Zone. Amy, however, looks coldly at him, demanding to know her son's whereabouts. Zach gets angry at her, calling her a bad mom and how she does not deserve to have David. After mocking and insulting her, he whispers in her ear that David is his now. Amy screams and thrashes, but she is soon tied with her hands to the wall. The boy on her side hits her on the head and she falls on her knees. Zach then announces to everyone that she is their mommy now, as she would be telling them stories. Saying that, he comes near the poor woman and tortures her by pressing the wound on her forehead. Amy screams till her consciousness fades. The scene shifts back to the past. We see Amy sitting beside David's bedside, reading him a nighttime story. Amy comes back to her senses for a bit and sees that she is back to the same room she was kept in earlier. Above her, in the window, there is a strange monstrous entity trying to slither his way in, but to no avail. Unaware of the apparent threat, Amy's conscience fades once more, transporting her to the past. She is again inside the hospital. All the arguments regarding her comatose son keep playing in her head. She remembers how Peter asked her to let go. In her daze, she makes her way to the bathroom where she passes out. After regaining her conscience, she emerges from the bathtub in the Forbidden Zone. All the while, Timmy keeps track of her without her knowledge. Back to the present, we see her passed out in the locked room, but this time, Timmy and Becky are standing beside her. The two of them argue about whether to help her or not. Becky tells Timmy that Sarah told her to help Amy because she would be able to help them too. Timmy, however, is skeptical. He says that she was the one who brought the wall walker to them. Timmy goes to check on the window to see if anyone is onto them. Becky tells him that they should not be afraid of Amy. Sarah also tells Becky how Amy is not asleep and she can hear them. Becky goes near the woman to caress her arm and tell her that it is okay. Amy, startled, quickly gasps awake. She cowers in the corner and then looks up to find the two standing before her. She watches the two closely and then pleadingly asks if they know where her son is. Timmy refuses to help her. He says that they cannot get to him. Becky cuts him, saying that someone named Jean might know. However, Timmy is not pleased to hear this. He warns her that they would be they partake in such a risky task. Desperate to meet her son, Amy promises to protect them and they finally agree to help. The three of them sit down to make a plan. Afterwards, the three of them carefully leave the room to go in search of David. Tiptoeing through the hallways, they evade the guards of Zach that are keeping watch. As Amy is descending the stairs, she gets a strange deja vu, remembering the hospital's ward. She feels as if she has seen Isaac here before. Coming back to her senses, Amy calls out Isaac's name when all of a sudden, she hears banging noises on the window just behind her. A group of strange creatures repeatedly hit the window, trying desperately to get in. Timmy rushes towards Amy's side and asks her to get away from them. These creatures are called the Weepers and they always want to get inside to bite them. He also tells Amy that the walls protect them. That's why the Weepers can't get in. Hearing this, Becky cuts in, mentioning how they got in a few times despite the walls. She blames Zach and the Wallwalker for this. Amy wonders what and who this Wallwalker is. She has been hearing this name quite a few times, so she questions them, but the two kids refuse to answer. On the other side, Zach's guards come to check in on Amy and find that she has fled. They rush out to search for them. Amy overhears them calling the search party and immediately asks the kids to hide. All three of them hide under the furniture. Moments later, the same girl with the forehead scar, named Jean, comes after them. As she is about to attack Timmy and Becky, Amy comes to their rescue. Pushing the girl away, she takes the children and runs off towards the Forbidden Zone. Back upstairs, two other guards of Zach arrive and Jean points them to the direction of the woman. One of the boys goes after her while the others stay back. In the meantime, Amy, Becky, and Timmy finally arrive at the washroom. Amy looks at the bathtub filled with crimson red water. Just then, Becky starts crying. Amy tries to soothe her and she tells Amy that she is scared for Sarah as the doll has not been here before, thus she cannot find her way. Amy hushes her kindly and tells her that she might know where David is. After coming back to this place, a realization hits her. This school is indeed the hospital. She pieces everything together. How Valerie talked about the walls burning and the burned walls she saw earlier, and how Peter told her the hospital used to be a school before. Together, she takes the two and they set out once more. In the hallway, Becky stops all of a sudden. When Timmy turns back to ask her, she trembles in fear. Sarah has told her to hide. They all simultaneously turn around. To their horror, one of the Hungaries pops up. The terrifying monster jumps down from the ceiling, making them stop in their track. With hearts beating wildly, they freeze on their spots, but it is of no use. The monster has already seen them. Amy pushes them to the side and shouts at the monster to catch its attention. Her plan works and soon she rushes away from the kids with the monster on her heel. She runs up, back towards where Jean had caught them. There on the doorway, she stumbles across the group. One of them is about to shoot her with an arrow, but she swiftly moves out of the way. The arrow hits the doorframe just as the Hungary pops in. Chaos ensues as the group sees the monster. It totally forgets Amy and advances towards the group. As Amy is about to rush out of there, the boy that went after her earlier, named Zane, rushes in. He loads an arrow and shoots. However, instead of Amy, he shoots at the Hungary. Amy rushes out and arrives back at the Forbidden Zone. There, Timmy and Becky rush to hug her. They tell her how these Hungaries are dead bodies and they crawl up from the basement. If they get someone, they will turn into a monster just like them. The three set out on their search for David once more. In the meantime, back upstairs, an argument ensues among the group on going to the Forbidden Zone in pursuit of Amy. Nobody wants to go down there, thus Zane decides to go alone. As Jean steps forward to accompany him, he warmly declines and tells her to protect the others in case another Hungary shows up. Zane goes down. Jean stays there while the others go inform Zach about everything. A livid Zach rushes out in anger accompanied by the group. On the other side, Amy finally reaches the place where David's room is supposed to be, however, she cannot find the way in. Timmy and Becky lead her in through a little, almost closed-up hole in the corner. Once they get in, to Amy's surprise, Jean is inside. Before she gets worked up, a shocking twist is revealed. Jean wasn't with Zach from the beginning. She had been acting all along, waiting for a chance to get away and rebel. In the meantime, Zach also arrives at the Forbidden Zone and sees Zane. He sarcastically offers help, but Zane declines. Getting angry, he rushes in and brutally the boy's face in spite. On the other side, we see Jean telling Amy about how the school used to be a heaven before a demon got in. She tells her the demon had powers and thus they were all dominated by its evil nature. Amy immediately understands that the demon is none other than Zach himself. She also tells her about the wall walker. It somehow got trapped in between the walls and thus it has been there for a long time. When Timmy and Becky try to call it evil, Jean declines. She tells them that the wall walker is a poor soul that just wants to get help. Amy's heart sinks as she realizes that the wall walker is none other than her son, David. She rushes and claws at the walls, desperately calling her beloved son. As she does, the wall starts to glow. The others beam with happiness as they realize that Amy has powers too. All of a sudden, the wall walker appears and an emotional Amy follows it, but she is unable to free it. Before they can leave, Zane arrives. Although he tries to threaten them at first, Amy notices his troubled heart. She soothes him and he soon lowers his weapons to let them go. Zach arrives there to find Zane all alone. After finding them gone, Zach burns the room down. On the other side, as the group is running, Becky turns around in search of Sarah. Amy and the others run forward as they know that Zach would not hurt Becky. But unbeknownst to them, Zach catches Becky and this along with breaking her doll. He then carries Sarah with him and moves forward. Meanwhile, Amy and the others arrive at a dead end. They either have to proceed to the basement, where a ton of weepers wait for them, or turn back and face Zach's wrath. The group chooses to go forth and lock the door despite the danger lurking below. Outside, the others are ordered by Zach to get them. Zane says that since they have gone to the basement, they have already won, but Zach wouldn't have it. He wants them finished for good. On the stairs to the basement, the three sit down. Amy wants to go down and search for her son, but Jean stops her. She finally tells her the truth about her son. She says that she cannot save him, because he is trapped in the walls forever, and what's more is that it is Amy that trapped him, making an opening for Zach to get in. She wouldn't let him go. Saying this, Jean holds her arms and turns them over. There, two deep cuts appear. A chilling realization dawns on Amy. Back in the washroom, she had tried to end her life, and that is how she arrived at this place. Back upstairs, Zach hears a ringing of danger in his head and goes nuts after seeing a holy portrait emerge on the evil walls. Since Amy knows now, she might just turn things ugly for him. He orders for others to quickly assemble weapons and burn everything down. Back in the real world, a worried Isaac sits between two unconscious bodies admitted in the hospital, his son and his wife. On the other side, after a little push from Amy, the group finally descends the stairs into the dark basement. There, they see a door. Meanwhile, upstairs, the monsters invade and a deadly battle ensues. Back downstairs, the three decide to cross the water to reach it. Strange bodies start appearing in the water. Thankfully, they safely cross over. Amy pushes open the door and asks them to stay put. She will check if it is safe and then let them in. As she steps inside, the door closes shut on its own. Before her lies a long bridge that she crosses over. On the other side, a door opens and she sees her little son playing by the water. Arriving at the scene, she sees herself and Isaac arguing on the side about how she never gives her family some time. As they argue, David loses his footing and falls into the water. Isaac madly rushes over and climbs in to save their son. As Amy worriedly peeks in, Zach emerges out of nowhere and drags her into the water. When she emerges back, she finds herself in the waters outside the room. She exclaims, saying that she knows what to do now. Strange noises start echoing, and they know that the wall walker is here. She goes near the wall and puts her hand on it. Miraculously, David emerges. However, he can't seem to remember Amy. Jean says that since he is one of them now, that is why he might not remember her. This stabs at poor Amy's heart, but she gets up. As they cross the river, Zach appears and Amy decides to stay back. She tells Jean to take the kids up while she ends this. An intense fight ensues and Amy finally banishes him to hell, where he belongs. Before she can climb up, all the bodies inside the water grab her. With a few seconds left, she tells Jean to take care of her son and all others. The bodies drag her down into the depths of the water. Back in the real world, Amy gasps awake to find a worried Isaac by her side and her son no longer there. The movie ends with the others finally being free of the demon Zach and smiling with relief for once.